arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive and you don't have to be afraid.
Welcome to the Bassline, everyone. This is a special event, you might say. I'm joined today by some really good friends, all guests of the program, except for my friend Michael J. hasn't officially been a guest, but he's been my de facto producer behind the scenes, sending me notes while I'm on air and giving me feedback after every program. So we have some good friends here, and everybody here knows each other, except I'm not sure if Kraig Blue has officially met Tessa previously. But in general, this is just a big bunch of friends here, and we're going to have a conversation in a panel discussion format, but really more of an informal sort of a format. I'm going to be performing in San Diego this weekend. So I'm going to be on the road, and that's why this is a pre-recorded program. And I thought, you know what? It's time to do that panel discussion style of show because there's so many great friends, and I'd love to hear an interactive discussion from time to time as much as I enjoy featuring particular guests. So let's start out by actually mentioning the event we just did. I think it's worth mentioning for sure. We just did an incredible event, if I do say so myself. I think it was incredible in Harlem on 124th Street and Malcolm X, 274 Lenox Ave. It's a great spot called Rock Mill, owned by my friend Milton Washington, who's just an all around creative guy, incredible photographer, a connoisseur actually of clean cannabis is his mission to provide people with clean cannabis. But he's also a fitness instructor who has his own fitness system called Rock Mill, and it's using an African stool as the only tool that you use in the workout. And it's just quite brilliant the way he put this system together. And it's become a very popular fitness class. So I would recommend you check it out. Rock Mill, that's ROKMIL. I'm sure you could find them on Google if you search them out. I know they're on Instagram. But yeah, a really fun workout. I've done it many, many times. Milton is a really phenomenal guy. He employs people in the community, and he opened up his venue for us to do a 528 frequency jam. And that was based on my conversations with Dr. Leonard Horowitz, a very popular guest of the Baseline, who I look forward to getting back on the air. But Dr. Horowitz, if you recall, is a total believer in the significance of correcting the tuning of our music. He says that we have it all wrong, that when we tune the note A to 4 out on this sort of divine harmony that is created when you take things up a little notch and you make 440 444, which then aligns with the note C being 528, which is, according to Dr. Horowitz, and I think there are others who are into this science behind all this. The 528 frequency, according to Dr. Horowitz, is the frequency of the sun and the human heart. And he says that if you looked on a piece of paper, if it was made into a visual image, you could see so clearly that when you tune the note A to 444, it's like a flower blooming. And if you tune it to 440, it's a warped image that is not a correct image that you would be able to see clearly. So I'm exploring all this. I have a lot to learn about this concept, but I've been trying it out. So I go and I play with a band and they're tuned to 440 because that's what everybody knows. But then I run home and I retune my instrument to 444. And I was making some loops, which were the basis for some of our jams. And my brother Kevin Nathaniel has mbiras in a variety of different keys. And Michael J, he showed up and brought his gongs. And our group, the three of us, myself, Kevin Nathaniel, Michael J, we have a group called the Healing Sound Ensemble. But this new band, it's the same players, but it's called African World Revolution. named after a John Henrik Clark book. So that's what just happened this Sunday is we did our first ever 528 jam. And I'm going to say right here at the beginning of the program, so you guys can start spreading the word, we have our second jam in this series next month on Sunday, April 27th. Doors are 3:30 p.m. Music starts about 4 p.m. We jam for about 2 hours, and it's an incredible event. So please start spreading the word about that. Bassline listeners showed up, and it was just very moving that folks drove all the way from Connecticut to be there. Folks drove from New Jersey. They told me they're regular listeners of the program. It was just a pleasure and an honor to meet actual listeners of the program who are all just wonderful folks. And I hope more of you guys show up and we can start meeting face to face and just continuing the dialogue around all the critical matters. Now, speaking of dialogue around critical matters, I want to bring our esteemed panel up for introduction here. We have my very good friend, Kraig Blue, former guest and co-host on the Bassline. We have my very good friend Kevin Nathaniel, another medical freedom champion and master mbira player and just phenomenal man, phenomenal musician. We have Substack superstar, I call her, my good friend Tessa Lena, who is a brilliant writer and artist who actually sat in with us and did some great vocals and spoken word on Sunday. Um, Kraig Blue is a brilliant visual artist. He's also a percussionist. So next time he's going to be bringing his drums to the jam. And yeah, it's a talented group of folks that we have here to discuss various things. And I'm going to surprise you guys. Normally, I like to be organized and I have my show notes. I'm like, an organized show producer now. But on today's show, it's a little bit more informal. We're just going to discuss things and see where the conversation leads us. But one thing I'm going to say, let's start with Tessa, ladies first, principal. I hope that's not considered sexism, and I'm considered a gentleman for introducing you first, Tessa. But I would like to hear your take on something that was being discussed on a similar sort of panel, actually, by my friend Ryan Christian from Last American Vagabond. And he was making, I thought, a really good observation, which is that the Trump administration has come sort of bursting onto the scene, and there's the Doge thing or what have you. They're downsizing, they're they're firing so many people, they're trimming the fat. But then when it comes to the medical freedom conversation, that's been slow tracked. So it's just interesting, I find, and he was pointing this out, how come they were so into just sort of rolling up their sleeves and getting all of this stuff done, but not so much in terms of our demands, the stop the shot demands of removing the dangerous COVID injections from the market, removing mRNA as a platform from the market. I mean, and in general, we could get into a broader discussion about vaccines writ large. But first of all, we certainly have to get rid of these toxic, negative efficacy COVID injections. But that's been slow tracked as all this other stuff has been uh, handled so abruptly and so robustly. What's your take, Tessa, on those comments? What do you think we should feel as a medical freedom movement after the appointment of RFK and at the same time this strange announcement on day 2 of the Trump administration that we should be thrilled about the forthcoming mRNA cancer vaccines? Where do we stand, and what's your view in terms of where we stand relative to the new administration?
Well, first of all, thank you, Jeremiah, and I am very happy to be in this company today. And I think I have lots of cynical things to say, but before I do that, I think we forgot to introduce Michael J. So I want to do that. Michael J is also on the panel, and it is
Oh,
a
right.
beautiful world here.
I mentioned him as a member of the Healing Sound Ensemble. I'm sorry, but I didn't formally introduce him. Michael J. is just an incredible friend, an incredible man. He is, like I said, he's sort of a behind the scenes producer of the Bassline. He's very supportive of that program and helps make it a little bit better, which I greatly appreciate. He's also a gong master, and he's the third member, the first member, the second member, whichever way you want to look at it. He's one of the three members of the Healing Sound Ensemble, which is myself, Kevin Nathaniel, and Michael J. So, yeah, thanks for that reminder, Tessa. We have Tessa Lena, Kevin Nathaniel, Michael J., and Kraig Blue. And I'm your host, Jeremiah Hosea Landis, host of the Bassline. And what's your take on where we stand, Tessa, in terms of this new administration and what I was just mentioning and sort of paraphrasing some of the observations of my friend Ryan Christian?
Well, my take is fairly cynical, as you might guess from the fact that I'm a Soviet expat. So overall, my take on what we can accept from politicians is not very optimistic, which is to say I have low standards. And the positive side of that is that I am not currently going through shock because I thought those things were going to be slow tracked. And thank you for introducing this word into this conversation. What I think is happening, and that's probably not a revolutionary thought, but I think that the people who want to control us all use the so-called two-party system to scam different sectors of the population at different times. And, you know, they would press one group at one time, another group at another time, make people fight with each other, make people be really lenient toward their guy, whoever that guy is, whichever side he comes from. In the meanwhile, the same agenda seems to be advancing. And granted, they pay different kinds of lip service. Like the so-called Democrats, the so-called Republicans, they say different words. And I don't want to say anything about people on the ground because people on the ground tend to be sincere, whether I agree with their views or not, but they tend to sincerely believe in what they say and want certain things, certain way. People on the top, on the other hand, just say words. That's my humble opinion. And I completely agree with you. The mRNA cancer vaccines don't sound like something that people in the health freedom movement were looking forward to. And let's not forget, Mr. Warp Speed remains Mr. Warp Speed. So he verbally expressed a lot of pride in his wonderful COVID injections. And that's the signature of his entire presidency in a way, Warp Speed and COVID, all that. And people have an argument that it was not him who introduced the mandate. I agree with that argument. But it seems like while Klaus Schwab version of the Great Reset was scary to half of the country, Elon Musk / Trump's version of the Great Reset doesn't feel scary, but they seem to be doing more or less the same thing. So that's my relatively brief, cynical take.
Yeah, I love those comments in this sort of orchestrated event. It made for a visual image in my mind. But I would love to hear, in follow-up to that, my brother Kraig Blue, who we share a lot of the same views when it comes to disdain, I would say, for the two-party illusion. I call it one party pretending to be two, the uniparty, people will say. I have no enthusiasm. My friend, my good friend of many years, Kraig Blue, he is like me in terms of we have no enthusiasm for politicians. I'm sure most of us here are pretty unenthusiastic, but I've spoken about this mostly with Kraig Blue in terms of we don't feel that it's a correct action to endorse these powerful people and support them in their political aspirations. They've betrayed us repeatedly. And a word that comes up quite often, Brother Blue, that we sort of laugh about, but it's unfortunately, a very useful word, is people are very confused. it seems, about what the U.S. government is, about the nature of power. Could you talk about some of the confusion that we observe, Brother Blue, in terms of how we relate to the two-party system, the so-called two-party system?
Okay. First of all, greetings, everyone. My apologies. I was moving around, putting away groceries, and I have a roommate, so which is my mother. So I was moving around a lot on camera, but I'm a little bit steadier right now. So first of all, just to give you a context of history very quickly, I have read and am a student of Frederick Douglass, autobiography, W.E.B. Du Bois, Sheikh Anta Diop, John Henrik Clark, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. John Claude Anderson, Neely Fuller, and Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. And most of those African-American scholars have come to the conclusion that most of the African-American population is thoroughly confused because of the nature of racism and white supremacy in the country. And that's a global, global system. So most people of African-American descent, and then most people, the average person of many races, don't understand the actual aim and goal to try and subjugate people of color around the world. So in America, when we talk about there's a two-party system, that's actually some kind of illusion that pits, like Tessa Lena said, it pits two people or two different races, two different cultures in America against one another to have two different views. So basically like saying you're Jewish and you're Christian, and my God is better than your God. And then every year or every several years, they come out and they petition for your consent to do things to the larger population, and I see it in those same terms because religion kind of does the same thing. It's just a different sort of politic in the world and around the world and in this country. But for 3 decades after reading many of these scholars, and me and Jeremiah talking about these scholars and other friends of ours reading these scholars, poets, giving me information, giving me some of the academics to read and the intellectuals to read, I came to just a conclusion that was really based on truth and less on my belief. Not what I believed, and my emotional beliefs. So I became very objective in looking at the racial politics, looking at the national politics, and then speaking to people and looking at and asking them questions about what they really thought and really believed in culture and what was happening to them. And I found that a lot of times that we didn't really understand. So I'll give you a quick example that my brother thinks that Donald Trump is just going to destroy the world. He's the worst president. Things are just going to just break down. The whole American system is going to break down and we're going to suffer from it. But then I had to ask him, so then do you think that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are two different white males? Do you think that they live in two different, totally different stream strata and that they have two totally different agendas? And he was like, yes, they are. And I was like, well, how do you justify that? How do you qualify that? Because they're both millionaires. We don't know them personally. They do not live in our communities. They do nothing for our communities. Their children don't go to our same school that the children that I teach or that Jeremiah's children go to. So it's like, so how can you relate to Joe Biden or you relate to Joe Biden and think you have something in common with him, and you see Donald Trump as a total antithesis of Joe Biden in politics? And he just came up with a multitude of explanations, but there were a lot of false equivalences in his logic. And to not argue with him, I just listened and I just continued to ask questions the same way that a Neely Fuller or Dr. Francis Cress Welsing or even Dr. John Henrik Clark, instead of my opinion or my point of view or my perspective, let me just continue to ask questions so I can really understand how this person's thinking. And coming to the conclusion that a large part of the population is just confused about how the system works. Because from Latinos to, Caucasian Americans, Italian Americans, Asian Americans, African Americans. People think that there is two separate parties that work on two separate platforms and don't have a combined agenda. And that's just not true.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like the system playing good cop, bad cop within itself at all times. George Bush was sort of a bad cop. Here comes Obama, the good cop. He extends the Patriot Act, continues with the drone bombings, escalates them, in fact, annihilates the sovereign African nation of Libya, etc. But Donald Trump is the worst thing ever, which I like to ask people, and bear in mind, and you have to repeat this with these people when I say I'm not a Trump supporter. That's an amazing thing that's going on with the contemporary Democrat, the rank and file Democrat, is they repeatedly will accuse you of being a Trump supporter if you're outside of their little circle of thinking. And they'll even continue to define you as that when you say, I didn't vote for Donald Trump, actually. I had 3 opportunities to do so. I've written 26 or 20, about to be 27 articles. Please extract one line where I said one utterance of support for Donald Trump at any point. Didn't do it. But they continue. And it's funny, and that's George Bush logic, right? He didn't say either you're with us or you're against us. He said either you're with us or you're with the terrorists. And now I notice Democrats are employing that exact logic. Go ahead, Brother Blue, before I get to
that's a false equivalence. One of my favorite topics or classes in college was like ethics and logic, where it's like so because I don't support your candidate, then means that I support the other candidate. And that just doesn't make sense in a rational world. But also I found when me and you talk, and I'm sure when you talk to Kevin, when you talk to Tessa, when you talk to Michael, is that then you come to the conclusion after talking to multiple friends, family members, co-workers, is that people do not have a contextualized understanding of history. So this is a whole new thing that's happening. It's like, when I turned to my brother, I was like, my mom is 86 years old. She survived Ford, Reagan, Dewey. Multiple war criminals as presidents. She survived them. So I'm like, maybe you just need to change the way that you think and think less about what they're telling you, because you can't confirm anything, but maybe take more of an active interest in your community and what you can actually do. So what I do is I was led to teaching, and through teaching art, I've been able to get children's minds in that 520 frequency because they're making art, they're zenful. Put on some John Coltrane. Talk to them about, well, what do you think? What do you think? And it's interesting how the adults are already indoctrinating children into their specific religions. So children are Muslim. Children are celebrating Ramadan right now. They don't know why. They just do it because their parents say. They're like, one little girl said, I love Jesus with a little heart and put, I love Jesus. She doesn't know who Jesus is. She doesn't know the context, but that's what her parents are perpetuating. And it's like, they don't even know the religious history of Christianity. They don't understand the religious history of Islam. Not all, but a lot. And when they don't put it into context, then anything that happens today seems like it's happening and it's new. And it's like, no, Donald Trump is no different than a multitude of American presidents. He's no different than George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. They're all the same, oligarchs wanting to control and manipulate the minds of the masses. And I'm done.
Thank you, Brother Blue. Now, you brought the issue up of racism, white supremacy, which we discussed. Now, I'll just say, I just find amongst the so-called contemporary left and the so-called right, I find myself continually looking for a third party option that I don't really appreciate either point of view in a lot of cases, just like I won't say I'm a Democrat or a Republican. So, on the one hand, you have people who I would call them sort of racism deniers. They're very resentful of the idea of anyone discussing racism. And they say, oh no, that there's no racism and that's a bunch of malarkey and the victim mentality and everything. And no, there is historically racism. It is a part of this country and the history of this country in the context of our social reality. But then On the other hand, it gets co-opted into Black Lives Matter, which to me is sort of a watered down version of Black nationalism. And I keep saying, let's go back to some of the authors you mentioned, some of the thinkers that you mentioned, Blue, in terms of we have a rich canon. We don't need necessarily new ideas per se on that subject of the condition of our community. That has been thoroughly written about and examined. We have Dr. Clark, we have Dr. Amos Wilson, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to pass the ball now to Brother Kevin Nathaniel. He made a comment the other day that I really liked, and I've been repeating it. It stuck with me, which is medical mandates are one of the last skeletons in the closet of white supremacy. And it's amazing how the Black Lives Matter flag wavers refused to discuss the disproportionate effects of mandates on the Black community. They refused to discuss the disproportionate effects of lockdown on Black businesses. I heard 40% of all Black businesses were wiped off the face of the map during COVID. I heard it was globally, it was a $5 trillion wealth transfer. I wrote an article about it a while ago called Operation Dog Shakes Fleas. Please check that out about the intentional economic harm inflicted through the lockdowns. But I would love to hear from you, Brother Kevin Nathaniel. Could you describe a little bit what you were thinking when you made that comment that I have found myself repeating since you said it, which is that medical mandates are one of the last skeletons in the closet of white supremacy?
Thank you for bringing that up, because it's really a special kind of way of looking at it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. So these medical mandates that we have dealt with and that we saw coming up, I mean, when I saw them, it literally said to me that forget whatever your world point of view is, whatever your ancestral point of view is, whatever was developed through your legacy of your culture, wherever you came from, forget that, because that doesn't count. What counts now is this viewpoint on medicine, this viewpoint on what is legit for medicine, that will be now on a pedestal. And you will have to agree to that. You will have to take that and bow down to that. And the bowing down to that, which is what medical mandates basically are, it's basically saying this concept of medicine, which, really is questionable. It's a very questionable concept of medicine that is talking about some experiments and ideas that began in 17th century Europe, where the scientists were supposedly making breakthroughs. They decided to sort of put everything under a microscope and view the world in a fragmented sense. And but at the same time that they decided to put things under a microscope and view the world in that fragmented sense, they were also trying to substantiate real estate grabs in other parts of the world, especially the global South. And there was a papal bull, which basically was a religious statement that was going to allow for real estate grabs and the denial of whole cultures of their own science. Basically, if someone says, "Who's a scientist?" and you talk to the Mbuti people of the rainforest, they can walk you through the rainforest and name every plant and its properties and tell you what it's good for and what it's bad for. And they can sit in the forest and tell you where the birds are and where the animals are, and what the birds are telling us. If you ask me who a scientist is, those Mbuti people in the rainforest are true scientists. they're far more true scientists than anybody in a white lab coat, because they can't make sense out of all that stuff. They can't walk through the forest and name the plants and tell you what the plants are good for, or tell you what the plants are saying to you. So, this is the things that matter. These are the things that medical mandates write off and discount, and in fact, seemingly attack. And so this is a sort of a worldview that says your legacy, your culture doesn't count. Personally, in my own family, I have a whole side of my family which came up from medicine, but their medicine began all the way back in the early 1800s and was partly Native American. And so one of the adages that came from my mother's side of the family was, you can take this medicine and you wait 7 days and you'll probably be all right. You'll probably be all right. Or you can wait 7 days. You could just wait 7 days and you'll be all right. So this is something that came literally through my mother's side of the family, repeated from generation to generation, because they were doctors on that side. And they did not use and they did not prescribe pharmaceutical medicine to their patients. And this came all the way from Native American and African traditions. This doesn't, even though they went to med schools and, but they were radical in that sense. But their radical sense came from a cultural lineage. And so this cultural lineage flowed through so many different cultures, not just African American alone, not just Native American alone, but many other cultures. But when we see medical mandates show up, medical mandate says none of that counts. None of that is legit. We're telling you that your medicine is all woo-woo, and what we have now is real medicine, the legit form of medicine. Meanwhile, that's this approach is the most questionable medicine. It's the medicine form that's been studied the least. These medicine forms that come from Native American culture, African culture, been studied for thousands of years. They have a thousands of years, and perhaps even a tens of thousands of year legacy behind them, and tested for that many years to see if they work. But this medicine form that comes from the 1700s in Europe has only been tested, used for maybe 100, 200, 300 years at most. And it's had sketchy results. So this is why I say, this is just because, we've had several skeletons in the closet of white supremacy come out and get fully fleshed out, blasted in the spotlight, and debunked. But this is one of the last ones that didn't get blasted in the spotlight and debunked.
Mm.
And we are in this phase now where it's being debunked. It will go down. That pedestal is coming down. But there are those that want to hold it in place. And as Africans, or as anybody who has any sort of cultural legacy outside of that certain sector of Europe, you got to take it off that pedestal. You got to immediately, as fast as you can, remove that from its pedestal and put it in the same circle as everything else, and realize that if you've got something in your legacy that works, then that's probably way more of value medicinally. Anyway, that's where.
Yeah, no, great explanation. I love what you described there, brother. That was great. So now I'm gonna ask my friend Michael J. I'm gonna change directions slightly, but it's all related. I want to ask my good friend Michael J. to assist me in something I've been trying to do on air. But brother Michael J., can you do me a favor, and can you invite the listeners out there to our Stop the Shots community? Because Michael J.'s been tuning in on X on a regular basis, almost nightly basis, and we have Stop the Shots gatherings virtually every day, every night. I tend to host my spaces at either 9 p.m. or 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. If I can't make it another very competent host will jump in and cover for me. But we've been doing nightly spaces, and I would love to hear from you, Michael J., if you could invite the Bassline listening audience to stop the shots.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And
Speak right into
really
your
love,
mic. You're a little quiet.
okay, I really love being on this panel, so thank you for calling it.
It's a pleasure. Very glad to have you, brother.
And thank you for that, Kevin. Really beautiful. Anyway, for the stop the shots, you know, the shots seem to are the pinnacle of Western medicine, you know, vaccines. And in the spirit of what Kevin was saying, they need to be stopped, because not only do they, I mean, I think it's an understatement to say that they don't do their job. I think they do their job perfectly well to set humanity up for, or whoever takes them, up for a lifetime of sickness. And we know this because there are populations that don't take them, and they're generally much healthier. And so I invite people who care about those things, who want to, you know, place the West, take the West off the pedestal and put it in a circle with everybody else. You know, there are some great things in the West, but the things that seem to get most promoted in the West are the most destructive things on the planet. And so I invite people to listen to the Bassline as one show among several that really address this, especially focus on the medical freedom aspect, and focusing on taking, you know, I can't get over that phrase, taking Western medicine off the pedestal.
Yeah, it's a great one.
They're fabulous. They're great if you need to reattach your arm, but they're not good at anything else. And so they have a place, but that's it. It's about 10% of medicine. The rest of it, somebody else needs to, there are other ways of approaching things. I'll end.
Yeah, actually, no, thank you, Michael J. And you actually set me up perfectly for a great question for Tessa, who's working on, I don't think we have time to go into it here exactly today, but I just encourage you to check out Tessa's Substack. She's coming up with some really just great articles, and she has a new unified theory, which I don't want to ask her about that right now because we have a little less than 20 minutes left. And I just recommend you go to her Substack and check out her latest articles and all of her articles. But I wanted to ask you, Tessa, in terms of, you know, I was surprised through, among other things that surprised me throughout the COVID event, I was very surprised at people being so uncritical of pharmacology. I thought it was sort of a well-known thing that we're an overly medicated society and that we should be easing away from that, not getting more medicated. And then all of a sudden it became this sudden thing that we're all just supposed to be just heavily medicated. Just go take 1 million vaccines. And, you know, if you don't take your vaccines, you're crazy. And I just wonder what you think, Tessa, in terms of how do you think it got so hip? And I put that, you know, in quotes. How did it become so hip to have zero critique of the pharmaceutical industrial complex, even amongst people who are so critical about other aspects of society? When did people think it was a good idea to take this hands-off approach about the pharmaceutical industrial complex?
Oh, thank you, Jeremiah. You actually gave me a perfect setup to tell the story that I was going to tell anyway. So thank you for that.
Perfect.
So the word, and that is also a comment on Western medicine and what Western medicine used to be before it was just like medicine, traditional medicine in other parts of the world, murdered and subjected to violence and rape and all those things in that order. But the word from which pharmaceutical or pharma comes, it's pharmacopoeia. I think it's in the Bible. It means witchcraft or sorcery. And then the original word before that was pharmakis, which is a Greek word. Originally, it meant a witch, and it was not a negative word at all. It referred to healers and herbalists and people who knew how to heal using, again, herbs and various traditional things. And then gradually, as culture developed and institutional faiths came in with all the competition and all the tricks and psychological and spiritual tricks, this word became negative because witches are bad. And so, but ironically, linguistically, pharma became a good thing, just like what you're saying. And perhaps there was some spiritual trickery involved in its rising. And that is the theory I'm going to go with. And as far as why people became so in love with it, again, I think there was a lot of trickery done upon people, not just basic psychological trickery or propaganda and fear-mongering and things like that, but I think there was possibly also some magic involved, and people really thought that they were doing the right thing. Remember, saving the grammar, fake compassion, thinking that they were doing something right, that they were actually on the good side of history, and also scared out of their minds for themselves, for the children, for their families, and acting enchanted, not just figuratively, but also possibly literally. So, and as we all remember probably on this call, people who used to criticize corporations actively as their motto before 2020, all of a sudden became big fans of Pfizer, as if Pfizer didn't have to pay out the biggest settlement in the history of medical industry prior to that. I think there was grand psychological trickery involved in that entire thing, and both basic and also far more sophisticated. And for that reason, I'm actually feeling extremely compassionate for the people who went for that, because I think that people were subjected to really heavy artillery of trickery. So, and my personal approach, which again, I can only speak for myself, is to treat people with kindness and compassion and understanding, and also protect myself in the process from getting too upset. If I cannot get through somebody, then so be it. Maybe they need time. But kindness, I think, is still in order, because yelling at people, and Jeremiah and I, Jeremiah, you and I talked about it before. So if you, even if somebody, let's say they believe vaccines are safe and effective, and they treat it as their God, just yelling at them is not going to accomplish anything at all, guaranteed. They are probably going to become more defensive and just stick around their belief a little longer. So the approach that I personally practice is, first of all, not put too much of my nervous system into that, because that can be, very, very emotional. If I tell things to people I care for and they don't listen, that can be emotional. So my first principle is not subject myself to suffering in the process as much as I can, but also use kindness, because with kindness we can do a lot more than with yelling. Did I answer your question, or did I completely hijack?
Yeah, great answer. Love that answer. Love this conversation. Actually, I'm dreading that it has to end within the hour, but you actually lead me to a good question for my friend Kraig Blue, who used a phrase that might be a Substack title, come to think about it. He's given me some good input for my Substack articles. Actually, one of my favorite articles, all of my articles are my favorite, but one of my favorites is an article called "We Missed the Muhammad Ali Moment." And that was taken straight from my conversations with Brother Blue, where we were talking about our failure to say no during that critical time of medical mandates. But another phrase you used, Blue, is we were just describing how effective this propaganda was similar to what Tessa was just describing, and it reminded me of your comments where you said everything they've done has worked like a charm. It's worked like a charm. So could you describe that a little bit, Blue, in terms of just the way people have, they're just going along for the ride? How has this propaganda been so effective? What came to mind when you were describing how these techniques have worked like a charm, as you put it?
Well, one, first with the Muhammad Ali moment, and this is Lovey, my confidant and quiet
He has a
warrior.
cat in his lap, by the way. So for those who can't see the video, it is all of you.
That's Miss Lovey Bastet, right? Um, once again, we talk about history and people's context and what they remember. And, our government is very good at helping people to forget what happened in the past, except for what they want them to remember. So 9/11, never forget. Enslavement, oh, they were immigrants. Africans came to this land. And that's what we're gonna stick to that story in Florida, and that's what happened. We're gonna even rewrite some books to say that. But people forget context and they forget history, and they're very, they try to be as present. And like Tessa said, I don't want to be cruel to anyone. That's why I ask questions. But Muhammad Ali, I grew up with him. I grew up watching his fights in the house with my mother, my brother, my father. But one of the most poignant aspects of his life was when they asked him to, join the military to fight against the Vietnamese, and he said no. And he drew that line. They berated him for changing his religion to Islam, changing his name. They continually wanted to call him Cassius Clay, and he said, "No, my name is Muhammad Ali." The government didn't enjoy, and the FBI started not only following him, but following Malcolm X, and then subsequently following Muhammad Ali. But that's one of our great lessons, I think, for any and all peoples, is when do you draw the line with this government, with this power system? When do you say, no, I'm not doing that? This is my body. This is my autonomy. I don't choose to kill people. I don't choose to vote for the lesser of two evils. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take this vaccination. Like Tessa said, Pfizer. People started defending Pfizer. They started defending Johnson & Johnson, who in the middle of the pandemic was going through lawsuits for their talcum powder. And people,
Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, there you go. Okay, you're back.
mic check. So Muhammad Ali is one of many people who I think of as a hero, but that also laid down a path for me to morally follow in the midst of immoral things and actions that are happening constantly, and then having me to consent to these immoral things because everyone else around me is saying consent, or they're in fear, or they're scared, or they've been sort of, the carpet or the rug has been pulled from under them, or they've just been confused. And so me and Jeremiah talk about that a lot. And then what was the other thing? Oh, what was the other thing?
It worked like a charm.
We work like a charm. Well, we see this consistent, and I think you all have seen it, this consistent programming. I mean, I watch television, I love movies, but if you step back and actually look at what you are being programmed with on a constant basis with media and all forms of media, even in my beloved hip hop music, where when I was a child, and I bought my first hip hop album, which was the Sugar Hill Gang, I could take it home. My mom could listen to it. Now, 50 years later, I don't even want to listen to half of it. And it promotes. And the children that I work with, which is how I know that programming is something that actually works, is that the children that I work with, they're saying the language, they're doing the behavior and not realizing that this is all being programmed into your mind. So the catchphrase of, oh, you're so unique and dream big, it's divisive to the human brain, but the parents don't understand it because everybody's just trying to live, and we got this onslaught of bills and living and weather and family and friendships and love, and we don't take time to really have those moments to really actually think and break down and reflect. What are we really listening to? What am I really looking at? What am I really intaking? What are the children or my children intaking that's assisting how I think? So my beloved brother doesn't understand that you're what you're telling me is what somebody else told you. He said that the vaccination, he was 100% sure that he was going to take my mom to go get vaccinated, and he was 100% sure that it was effective. And I was like, even with your third party information, with your fourth, 10th, sixth, eighth, ninth party information that's been filtered to you, you believe that this is effective, and you're going to make a decision for someone else. And that's why I drew the line. Not going to make a decision for me. You shouldn't make it for our mother, but there's nothing that I can do to stop you. And you all are people. You know, you all have the right to make your own decisions. Hey, mama, that's Miss Blue in the back. I'm on
Yeah,
a
you can't
call.
see her. The legendary Mama Blue.
Mom, that's
Brother Kraig
Jeremiah.
Blue is a very noble man in that he
That's
takes care of his mother. His father
Jeremiah.
died a few years ago,
That's all
and
right.
Brother Blue is there taking care of his mother on a daily basis. So it's very admirable what this
So,
man does.
you
But
know,
yeah,
me and Jeremiah talk about it. Jeremiah talks with all of you about it, but there are those principal lines. And I see, and like Kevin said, once you start pushing that line back, then things become normalized. And then people will actually defend what they wouldn't have defended 5 years ago, 2 months ago, a year ago. And all you have to do is kick people into some fear. And I'll land my plane on this. Because of one of the activities that I do, Jeremiah's a martial artist. I'm a practicing surfer. And the one edict of getting in the ocean, the first rule is don't panic. Even if you get hit by a wave, you get tossed around, you go under, your board hits you in the head. Don't panic. Come back up, get your bearings, look around, find your board, get back on it, look towards the horizon. But don't panic because you could actually drown. You could kill yourself. And people just don't understand that. They have a hard time not panicking. So most of the things that we do we're made to panic. And it's a psychological, it's Hegelian, it's psychological, and we see it. We know not everyone knows that it's happening, and that's the issue. And when you try to tell them, they resist. And like Tessa said, you can't argue with them because then they resist even more. So it's just like, well, why are you doing this? Well, if you need any assistance, I'll help you. But I'm not doing this. Muhammad Ali moment, not crossing that line.
right
And I'll
on,
land my.
brother.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Jeremiah. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you. Great comments. Now we're gonna get into kind of a rough one, but sorry, we gotta go there. Of course, I'm an independent artist. I've been on the road with over a dozen different bands. I performed in a variety of countries all around the world. Haven't been to Asia, unfortunately, yet, but I'm gonna get there. And I performed mostly throughout Europe, performed in Mexico, performed in Canada, performed in over 30 states in the union. Still have some states I haven't gotten to. Want to get over to places like Nebraska, um, and other such places I haven't performed just yet. But I've been a professional musician for, wow, some time now, some time. And Kevin Nathaniel as well is a professional musician. We've collaborated together in a variety of settings, and we've talked about how our art community really let us down. Basically, the artists are supposed to be the leaders of the culture in different ways. The artists are supposed to be the resistors. I think of artists being radical by nature, but I realized I was very naive and very idealistic. And unfortunately, a lot of artists, most artists, including some of the ones I thought were the most radical, just went along for the ride. And this was featured in my interview with Kevin Nathaniel when he was my individual guest on this program. But you made a comment recently. I hate to tag you with this intense comment you made, brother Kevin, but you said the artists who supported the mandates, or even I would say, I don't know if you were including them, but I might include even just the artists who didn't resist the mandates, who didn't speak out against them, which is most. They've lost their luster, you know. And in the case of like a Rage Against the Machine, how on earth does Rage Against the Machine do a vaxxed only concert? How? I was a big Rage Against the Machine fan, and I'll just tell you sincerely, it's so sad to me that I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, they sold out like that, that I can't listen to another Rage Against the Machine song. If you put on the music, I'll walk out of the room, and I'm definitely not paying to see that because it was a big lie. So please follow up on that comment about these poison pushing artists and how they lost their luster, Kevin Nathaniel.
Thank you. And I also said in that same conversation that I used to have artists that were my icons. I respected them. I loved their work, and that shelf got cleaned off entirely, almost. You know,
Yeah,
and how did that shelf get cleaned off? Why? Because as an artist, if you saw these mandates coming, what was really coming is they were coming after the kids. They were coming after the next generation. As an artist, if you could not drop your art and say, hey, you cannot do this to the next generation, they can't fight for themselves. If you didn't know that that was more important than your sales and then your tours and your accolades and your awards, if you didn't know that was more important, then I lost that. I lost you as an icon. I lost my respect for your art form because you were supposed to know that no matter what award you get, no matter how many record sales you get, no matter how many gigs you get, no matter how much progress you made in your art field, that was supposed to be in your heart. You were supposed to see that those kids, those newborn babies, were not going to be able to speak up for themselves. They were not going to be able to say, I don't want to take that jab. They were not going to be able to question the whole vaccine ideology. They were going to get brought up in a world where that was going to be thrown on them from day one. And you, as that link in society of somebody who was going to be able to do the Muhammad Ali thing, that's right. Say, if you cross that line, I will not comply. And I don't care what you take from me. That's a hard issue. That's a hard issue. And there were some artists that dealt in that hard world. You know, Eric Clapton, even though he took the shot, he dealt in that. Van Morrison. There were a couple other artists who did, you know, and they dealt with what happened as a result. You know, they dealt with being censored, being blocked out. But can you see what kind of effect that would have had on this planet if massive numbers of artists did that? You know, if they listened to their heart, because yeah, their heart told them, but then their managers told them something else, and their desire to keep their profits or keep their income told them something else. But you know, there's got to be an ethical line. That's an ethical line. There's got to be an ethical line because if you don't hold that ethical line, the next ethical line is coming and it's going to be worse. And that is where like I said, I lost my icons. You know, I lost them all because I said, if you didn't drop what you were doing there and say no and deal with the consequences of that, then what else are you not dropping your axe down or your instrument or your art form down to put in check? What else are you allowing to walk by and pay it and act like it doesn't matter or you didn't see it, you know? And that's where I say, no, this is, you know, I feel like there was a certain period of time when artists, you know, generally promoting that kind of sensitivity among people. And these are artists that were my, icons when I was a kid. And luckily, I guess lucky for them, a lot of them didn't have to cross that line into the vaccine world. They never got challenged with that. You know, but that's a crucial one. That's a very crucial one. It's as crucial as whether they supported the Vietnam War. Or perhaps more crucial.
Very well said, brother. Very glad for that clarification. So I want to ask the most general question in the world to close things out to my brother Michael J. I'll just say, Michael J is a sound healer. He's also a man who very admirably is taking care of his mother, uh, like Kraig Blue. So that's a whole other really, it should be an episode discussing what's happening with our elders. And I mean, one thing that infuriates me, don't mean to just totally change the subject, but like the number of scammers that call Mama Blue every day. Like the elderly are being preyed on by scammers in this country. I didn't hear any politicians mention that. How do we protect our elderly, our retired people from these predators who are calling them 1,000 times a day with every type of scam in the book? You won the lotto, you have unclaimed funds, we need your social security number, whatever the case, they have so many scams for our elders, and there's such a lack of protection for our elders. But not to talk about that specifically, just wanted to mention that quickly. But Michael J., I know you're very passionate about the crimes of Israel. I know you're very passionate about medical freedom. I know you're very passionate about your sound healing. As we close out this show, we've talked about a whole bunch of things just now, and there's so many things going on in the world. What would you like to impart on the baseline audience as we close out in terms of just some things maybe you would like people to realize? What would you like people to realize, Michael J., that maybe people aren't realizing in general?
Uh, Thanks for that. One thing I would like people to realize that is that when they're in groups of even two, but when they're in small groups, there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of meditative power there. There's a lot of visualization power there. And if we can work together on that level, it helps pave the way for more physical things to happen in our way, in our favor. So,
Oh,
yeah, I would
man,
like to.
grand slam. You just knocked it right out of the park. What great words to close this episode of the Baseline. I love that, the power of us being together, and that reminds me to mention one more time. Please save that date, April 27th. We're doing another 5 to 8 frequency jam. We got it started. Now help us build it and keep it rolling. And I wanted it to be a de facto medical freedom event, and it turned out being an outright medical freedom event, basically, because there was some great comments when we opened up the microphone. Different folks took the mic and shared freedom messages, I'll say. So it's great that we have a great space to do this. We have musicians to perform, and we have great folks to listen and to help us get this off the ground. So please save that date. And now you actually have a new way of supporting this program. Of course, you can support the Baseline by buying the theme song or any number of songs or albums at jeremiahhosea.com. You can become a paid subscriber to my Substack. If you can't afford to be a paid subscriber, immediately become a free subscriber. And when you're flush, become a paid subscriber. And then, of course, you can sign up for a chess lesson or buy a chess lesson for a loved one, remotelearningchess.com. You can reach me there or just an email directly to jeremiahhosea@gmail.com. JEREMIAHHOSEA. Please follow me at Earthdriver is my handle on Twitter, and join the Stop the Shots community. We're going to fire up a Stop the Shot space in about 30 minutes. Not from the time that this program airs, but 30 minutes from now, which is right now, it's 8:30 p.m. on Tuesday. This show will be airing on Friday, and I'll be in San Diego at that time. But I want to thank my distinguished panel, some really great friends here, some folks that I'm so happy to know, so happy to call friend, Michael J., Kevin Nathaniel, Kraig Blue, Tessa Lena, some people who I really value very much in my life. So, I thank you guys so much for making this happen. I've been visualizing this style of program, and I thought it was really enjoyable. So we're going to do this again at some point in the not so distant future. But everyone, please stay in touch, fight the good fight, and peace and love to all of you. Thank you. Take care.
When you walk with open arms towards the sun, you feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learned from a book or from the news. It's not like that, 'cause it's a thing. It is something that you do. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Dib on baby did long. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Dib on baby did love's the highest truth. Nothing could be higher than love, my friend. Love's the deepest truth. Nothing could be deeper than love, my friend. When you stop and you take the time just to think about your life, you'll recall the ones you love and the ones who were always there for you. Better thank those friends better. You better make amends. Go and tell them now, yeah. Tell them what they mean to